Hello everybody, I am Brian Mullins the Fox, and welcome to Dropping Flies 2, Degenerate Boogaloo. This whole documentary will be separated into 6 chapters. Chapter 1, The Roast Game, Topical Lore from 2022 to 2024. Chapter 2, My History with Odin in 2018, Fetishes, and Bashing Predator Hunting, and Predator Hunters, and how it all led up to me being where I am today on the internet. Chapter 3, My History with AI-generated art, or AI art in quotations, and Night Cafe Studio. Chapter 4, The entire moving out of Ohio process and moving into Missouri. Chapter 5, Documentary-themed rant. And Chapter 6, Conclusion and closing credits. Without further ado, let's begin. 2022, when it comes to roast game topical lore, is by far the longest year of all time. It starts with January 10th's deep dive into statistical data theft, the first example being the Liz Neprin article of 2014. January 15th, 2022, I answered the post-roast game question. 10 days later, on January 25th, 2022, I made a video for the first time ever going into culture shock being the reason why many things, including the roast game, happened at all. Fast forward to February 24th, 2022, I officially closed the door on the saga and legacy of me visiting that mobile home in New Lexington, Ohio, which is also, as I've said before, part of roast game theory lore for being the house in the real-life example of the roast game theory. Talking about how this will be the day that I will remember for the rest of my life, or the day of the investigation, which was February 24th, 2019, looking back at it, ranting about it, and moving on. I then got to the Christmas video essay that I made on April 4th, 2022. The total length of which is 10 hours, 9 minutes, and 50 seconds. I took another whack at talking about statistical data theft on April 11th, 2022 by debunking articles that steal Christmas dinner stats and calories from the UK as a substitute as if it came from their own country when it didn't. I then finally get to address the post-roast game Christmas dinner flavor and taste saga by uploading the video on May 1st, 2022. I finally seal the fate and made the video, which was the last ever video I recorded and managed to edit and upload in the comfort of the apartment before we moved out, called TPRGT, or the Post-Roast Game Theory, were families lying about what they ate as the centerpiece of Christmas dinner, and that was a question in the title, and right after that it says yes. This video was published on May 22nd, 2022. Right around the time Season 1 of the Post-Roast Game Theory began to premiere. It was the first of its entire kind to theorize the death of traditional Christmas dinner by the Christmas of 2026. Right around the same time, Debate.org announced that they were shutting down by June 5th, 2022, but unironically, they only shut down in the midnight hour or sometime after that on June 6th, 2022. Between June 12th and June 15th, 2022, the roast game Numbers by the Year was an 8-episode series that literally went through year by year of the roast game statistics, the roast game death toll, a good portion of ham waste statistics, and pretty much the rest of turkey waste statistics through this entire era. The first Numbers by the Year themed rant came out on June 24th, 2022, which is called The Roast Game. This is what you came for. Fast forward to August 1st, 2022, I made the first commentary rant video about statistical data theft in a while in this timeline, called Statistical Data Theft, What It Is and What to Do. It was around the same time I did the short-lived compilation where I literally compiled all the times I've said the roast game as a phrase for the past 5 years as of then. On August 6th, 2022. I then made the next statistical data theft rant on August 8th, 2022, which is called Statistical Data Theft When It Comes to Gun Control and Egg Waste in America. Commentary/rant. On August 17th, 2022, I edited the audio version of my 2019 response to Star Shadow's failed character assassination attempt, the same one that was played in the last documentary, known just as Dropping Flies. On the same day, on August 17th, 2022, I also uploaded the Roast Games Cannibalism Cartoon Fact to Episode 1, Somewhere in Dreamland, 1936, where I literally explain through text-to-speech bot David, the striking parallel and coincidence that Somewhere in Dreamland was released the day after Albert Fish, the famous child rapist, serial killer, and cannibal, was executed, which was on January 16th, 1936. Which was shocking to me because, again, it's a striking parallel because Somewhere in Dreamland became a Christmas favorite for a cartoon, basically because its own themes and obviously it's Christmas related, which is a coincidence because the roast game and the roast game era, alongside with cannibalism in this context, is also Christmas related. Then on August 22nd, 2022, text-to-speech bot Matthew stepped in for me for the first time ever with the commentary rant video known as Evidence is not the same as proof and proof is not the same thing as evidence. Fast forward to September 26th, 2022, when I posted hypothetical Christmas dinner numbers by the year 1998 to 2016. Do the prices add up? No. By the way, that's the title of the video. I followed that video up with my follow-up rant video after hypothetical Christmas dinner numbers by the year 1998 to 2016 on September 30th, 2022. On October 5th, 2022, I entertained the idea known as the Roast Game Fridge Audit and my 20-year statistical skip/statista prediction commentary/rant. Then on October 24th, 2022, I ranted about the irony behind the lack of data/statistics when it came to Christmas dinner during the roast game era. Then through October 29th, all the way up to October 31st, 2022, I got to the law of non-contradiction, consistency, logic, and the roast game, a 3-episode series narrated by text-to-speech bot Matthew and scripted by me, obviously. I then mentioned the topic of the roast game in a commentary rant video posted on November 17th, 2022 called Do We Really Raise Our Kids to Die? Yes, and it is very sad. Then to finish 2022 off with the final commentary/rant video to boot, called The Roast Game Christmas Dinner Price Paradox. On December 31st, 2022 through January 1st, 2023, I posted and premiered the first part of a 6-part series known as the Post-Roast Game The Entire Timeline. Then the day after, on January 2nd, 2023, I posted a commentary/rant video hiatus update for both Brian Mullins the Fox, the main channel, and the secondary channel. This was shortly followed up by a musical montage video posted on the Roast Game Records channel. Then throughout the month of January, the Roast Game Topical Autopsy premiered to fully just close the door on the topic when it comes to doing an autopsy of it and how the process went when it came to the slaughtering of each child for not believing in Christmas during the Roast Game era. And at the same time, I finished a 3-part series known as The Truth About the Very Foundation of Family, the Roast Game being one of the very foundational topics. Throughout January and February of 2023, I also ran this series of analyzing the topic of the roast game, the emotional, psychological, and statistical aftermath, starting with episode 1, Lack of Suicide Statistics and Why, premiered on January 20th, 2023. The next day, part 2 came out, which is called Needless Hostility, on January 21st, 2023. On February 28th, 2023, The Roast Game and The Roast Game Era 1998 to 2016 Systematic Analysis Commentary came out and was premiered, which was simply followed up by the third and final episode of The Roast Game, The Emotional, Psychological, and Statistical Aftermath, where I finally close out the series by addressing the statistical aftermath. Before all that, on February 1st, 2023, I premiered The Post-Roast Game Era in America, Consumption/Waste Statistics and Prices, Volume 1, 2017 to 2022. Back to March 1st, 2023, where I posted The Roast Game and The Post-Roast Game, all statistics and facts of both eras, 1998 to 2016 and 2017 to 2022. The first statistical compilation. Then on April 7th, 2023, I premiered the Complete Numbers by the Year collection on my main channel and did the same for my second channel on April 10th, 2023. Right around this time, I was promoting the 2023 documentary Dropping Flies, which came out in Thanksgiving. Now back to what we were going to continue talking about in Roast Game lore. Earlier in the year, I made a rant video called The Roast Game is What Happened in the Past and talked about why it is what it is. Then on March 14th, 2023, I made a video on my main channel called The Roast Game is the Reason Why Families Abandoned These Christmas Dinner Traditions and Bonus Proof. I then followed up that short rant video with another one called Logic and Statistics is Important on April 10th, 2023. Finally, on April 18th, 2023, I posted the Roast Game Mega Statistics and Logic Rant mini compilation. On March 22nd, 2023, I uploaded a video onto my second channel called The Roast Game Does It Really Add Up? Commentary/Rant. I then mirrored it on April 26th, 2023 onto my main channel. I then posted a video called Average Roast Turkey and Ham Consumption/Waste Statistics for each decade for Christmas 1900 to 1997 on May 21st, 2023, right around the time Season 2 of the Post-Roast Game Theory premiering-wise ended. I then announced on May 22nd, 2023 that I'm gonna start debunking lies about Christmas dinner and Christmas dinner history in response video format and other updates. This was not too long after my 24th birthday on May 7th. The next day, on May 23rd, 2023, I responded to History of a Dish's 2 videos about Christmas dinner history with precision. Then did the same thing 2 days after the other one, called Barely Reading Through History when it comes to the centerpiece of Christmas dinner. And of course, this was in response to Reading Through History, a YouTube channel that spreads constant misinformation about history and shit. I followed that up with The Truth About Why Christmas Dinner History is So Hard to Document, commentary rant video, on May 30th, 2023. On June 9th, 2023, I entertained for the first time ever in a short commentary rant video, the post-Christmas dinner era theory. Then on June 17th, 2023, I made a video called The Roast Game, Its Original Concept Has Been Proven Correct, where I literally proved the entire original concept that I conceived in September of 2017. Then on June 19th, 2023, the same day that my Twitter account got permanently suspended after 9 months and 6 days of having it, I decided to retire my first and old fursona phase, making room for the new fursona of mine, which is just brown instead of blood red and light yellowish mane fur colors with white bellies. Because I decided that it was the right time to conveniently pull out of this blood red colored fursona arc and went with a brown colored fursona arc. Throughout the month of July 2023, I made and completed a series called Setting the Pace, Brian Mullins the Fox's Guide to Point Out Fallacies and Inaccuracies of Statistics. This is also around the same time I talked about my experiences with the Numbers by the Year collection. I then made my first research compilation on the topic of the Roast Game on July 25th, 2023. Then on July 26th, 2023, I posted the video through text-to-speech bot Matthew narrating for me, The Roast Game, Families by the Number Theory, Research Channel Mirror, which was uploaded on the same day initially as well. Then throughout October of 2023, I released and premiered the first edition of the Roast Game Awareness Month. Then later on October 17th, 2023, I celebrated the fact that statistical data theft has officially entered into the Urban Dictionary. On November 24th, 2023, on my main channel, I posted a video called All the Roast Game Related Dramas and Rants 2018 to 2023, the entire first half-decade edition. On November 17th, 2023, on my Rant Archive channel, I made a commentary rant video video highlighting the fact that on November 17th, 2023, it marked 25 years since the roast game era began, and Christmas Day 2023 marked 7 years since the roast game era ended. I then started a podcast called The Brian Mullins The Fox Show starting on November 4th, 2023. Then on Christmas Day 2023, to finish the year of 2023 off when it comes to roast game topical lore, I made the first annual Christmas dinner analysis video on my main channel, which is also the last commentary rant video of the entire year from my main channel. On December 31st, 2023, I posted the second part out of 6 of the post-roast game The Entire Timeline. I then premiered an entire multi-series known as Christmas Dinner, the first of which, from January 4th all the way up to the 15th, is the pre-roast game edition. The second edition, known as the Roast Game Era Edition, premiered from February 2nd to the 4th, 2024, and then finally, the third and last part of the multi-series, known as the Post-Roast Game Era Edition, that premiered on March 1st all the way up to March 3rd. And then from March 4th onward up to March 23rd, I premiered Among the 13,383 Children, which is a multi-series documenting on what really happened to the remaining children that were spared. Right in the middle of this, on March 20th, 2024, all the way up to May 29th, 2024, the Post-Roast Game Theory Season 3 premiered, and then on June 1st, 2024, the entire third season was premiered all in one video. But before all this, after the Post-Roast Game The Entire Timeline Part 2 of 6 was premiered, on January 1st, 2024 at noon, my first promo lineup that goes with a schedule that every New Year's Day comes with a New Year lineup of content, abandoning the old tradition of doing these promo lineups or at least premiering them on my channel's birthday, which is February 27th. On March 5th, 2024, in between Among the 13,383 Children on the schedule, the Roast Game Proof Compilation number 2 came out, and then finally on December 15th, 2024, for the lineup before the third compilation of the post-roast game The Entire Timeline for 2024, the Final Spike came out, which is a post-roast game related Christmas dinner documentary. And this is of course after the second edition of the Roast Game Awareness Month. And then on December 31st, 2024, to finish off 2024, I premiered the third part of 6 of the post-roast game The Entire Timeline, which then is followed up by another promo lineup. On January 11th, 2025, I premiered November 17th, 1998, The Ballad of the Roast Game, which goes in complete detail, every nook and cranny on the topic, how culture shock caused every single one of these eras to begin and end, etc. And that's about it for catching you up to date with roast game lore. So now let's get into Chapter 2. Now we're in Chapter 2, where I explain my history with Odin, talking about fetishes, and me bashing predator hunters and predator hunting, which led me to be involved in the Pedo Hunter Civil War in a way where I was pestering Lio about when his Part 2 to his Caswar Fox series was going to be on, when it came to his Accountability and Responsibility series. But I'll let my previous Brown Persona phase explain the rest to you. Hit it. I'm going to talk to you all about my history. The most important to learn from bit of it. You'd have to go all the way back to 2018, where I called Odin Wolf out for making sexually suggestive content with sexually suggestive thumbnails, having no regards for any minor or even child in his audience. The snag there was, I accused Odin of being a pedophile. The first time. An action that kind of bit me in the ass initially, but now when I think about it, I should have called him for what he is, a predatory groomer that uses suggestive content and shows it to unsuspecting minors, emotionally and mentally putting them in harm's way. or if not, he is the harm's way. I initially then apologized for that broad accusation and how mean and harsh I was to him, but it later came out that not only did Odin make suggestive content when he has minors in his audience, he had an 18-plus pornographic Tumblr long before that platform went and completely deleted any and all porn from absolutely everyone and anyone on that site. He also had at one point an Ink Bunny account, which is cub porn center for anyone. There will eventually be a whole lot more to come out of this with. By the way, Ink Bunny is also feral center as well. Not just for raging pedophiles, but also raging zoophiles there as well. I should have also called him some kind of groomer, a manipulator of sorts, and not just a pedophile, but it's alright. Odin lost his main channel named Odin Wolf, which caused Odin himself to have a mental breakdown, where he's constantly shaking in fear and emotionally placated for now, or whenever he's recording himself having a meltdown. Now let's fast forward to 2022. On January 1st, 2022, I premiered the video separating objective fetishes from the subjective ones, for a clearly good reason, and for good measure too. Technically, nobody should have to worry about a predator until there's a real victim involved. Same goes for zoophile. But for a pedophile, no one should really have to worry about one until there's a real victim involved, whether that be a minor or even child. All the way up to the beginning of the storyline, in the previous part of the series, which began with me bashing predator hunters on December 14th, 2022, yada yada yada. And now here's the brief rant before I conclude this video. Here's the thing. The difference between me, Kaz Warfox, and Lio Convoy is that I actually care about a situation where someone actually is a groomer. Regardless of the mass flagging of that video that's been up on my BitChute for well over 5 years, regardless of how much I'm involved in this whole matter or some other aspects of it, I don't come looking for trouble. I don't try and adopt the victims I'm supposedly caring about even though I don't give a shit, and I certainly do not fake it for views. Because I legit care and I legit worry for animals and even minors or children. Because they don't really fully realize until they have all grown up that if they do any of this shit, and if they're not supervised by their parents, if their parents are just failures, they're going to put themselves in harm's way. Or worse, all the trauma, the sexual exploitation by either the predator or predator hunter, or being completely honest with yourself, going against both, could end up someone either getting murdered or that person committing suicide. And I am very concerned about that happening anytime in the future. So with that being said, I'll just get to why it occurred, how it ended, and how the aftermath is going. This is episode 1, recapping the Pedo Hunter Civil War on my end. Let's begin. On December 14th, 2022, I made my video bashing predator hunters by saying fuck predator hunters, addressing gripes and moral complaints about the practice itself, what it involves people doing, and not being Coyote Lovely or Kaz Warfox with an FBI or CIA complex, where other people, including those in the predator hunter communities, where they jack up to the quote-unquote evidence. On December 19th, 2022, I then made my follow-up video on my previous video bashing predator hunters by stating that A, you shouldn't use minors or even children as bait or decoys to catch or go after predators, because if you do so, you're basically endangering a child or a minor. B, we can't take the evidence at face value, and that looks and screenshots can be flat out deceiving. C, you can't just ruin people's lives for not just content, but also evidence. And D, you can't be hiding the truth for too long or forever, especially as to how much it's going to bite you in the ass. On December 28th, 2022, I was falsely accused of being a furry pedo by Draven Schuler, some loser on the internet I blocked and hid from my comment section of the first video on my second channel after the accusations were addressed and debunked. In early January 2023, I premiered the video doing research about statistics, bashing predator hunters for going with misinformation as to how widespread the situation is surrounding predators and prey, debunking misconceptions about predators, mentioning juvenile offenders, and finally going off on a passionate rant to conclude my series of bashing predator hunters in general. Fast forward to the actual beginning of the pedo hunter civil war, as Coyote Lovely was outed by Kaz Warfox and the Fox Mafia first. Then Lio Convoy decided to oust Coyote for flirting with a zoophile, having a past of LARPing, dating, and lived with a pedophile for evidence, along with sending a zoo sadist over to another zoophile. Gilded Poo basically caused the snowball effect of Coyote Lovely's downfall several months before the pedo hunter civil war actually began. When Kaz Warfox was outed and disavowed, all because of the Coyote situation in April of 2023, Lio Convoy made it a habit to spread absolute fuckloads of misinformation about Gilded Poo because of a time when Gilded Poo and Gallagher, along with others, raided back a Discord server with minors in it because someone else raided Pootopia first on Discord, and the whole Discord raid thing was caused by a meltdown, which was caused by Gilded Poo making fun of Lio himself for burning his face with melted hot glue while he was trying to wear his cheap gimmicky lion mask. Gilded Poo basically cut ties with Kaz Warfox and the Fox Mafia around this time. Lyle then made his addendum video addressing some misinformation, but not all, in a very shitty way, like the one about Keisuke not being into the adult baby diaper fetish. Lyle's part 2 video that came out on September 11th, 2023 doesn't address any criticisms of the first part, the addendum, or any other piece of misinformation that was spread by people and Lyle himself throughout those 3 videos, and it was not at all worth the long wait. Fast forward to sometime in June or on June 19th, 2023, I became fed up with waiting on Lyle's part 2 video. I didn't then initially make a video about him then, because I was still going through recovering from Twitter perma-banning me for the second and last time, all because I offended a bunch of lolicons for agreeing with the sentiment against lolicons. But the beef between me and Lyle began all because I agreed with somebody's sentiment on Lyle and Peaches not being reliable sources of information on July 11th, 2023, which I also added that predator hunting is a hobby and that predator hunters usually in general use minors as bait, use adult decoys, or just fakes it for content views, or words that straddle along those lines. Lyle Convoy then fires back at me, puts words in my mouth, tells me to sit down and be quiet, and the comment section debacle finally ends with me being pissed that Lyle kept gaslighting me about what I'm talking about, says that I should hop into a call either in his community Discord or the Senate on July 13th, 2023, the day that the comment section debacle ended. Then on July 18th, 2023, just 5 days later, I initially made the video exposing Lyle Convoy for his hypocrisy on how he treats Rosa Ray Ramsey for having let a predator be allowed to sit comfortably in a server full of minors and children for 8 months alongside with Rebecca Starlight, as opposed to 4 days. Which is also, ironically, the same time that it took Lyle Convoy and others to find out that Vita was a groomer, a predator, and has been a predator for several years. The main point of hypocrisy is that Lio acts all tough and angry when someone else fucks up a certain case like that, but not only used a minor as bait to go after predators 3 times out of the 5 grooming incidents on Jordan's track record of Jordan himself being groomed, having Vita around for 2 years, then from 2018 to 2020 as opposed to 8 months, making the distinction that 2 years is worse than 8 months in this case. The initial reaction wasn't too surprising, but this will change on the late night of July 27th to the early morning hours of July 28th, 2023, where Lyle Convoy shares my Drama Archive community post saying that I don't know what will happen to Lyle Convoy himself by shitting on me for saying or indirectly applying that he used a minor as bait and that I called predator hunting a hobby. Then announces a live stream response to me on the same day in another community post he posted later that day. All of this occurred simply because I criticized Lyle for the Vita situation and that I called predator hunting online a hobby, which got a hell of a lot of pro-Lyle fantards so easily butthurt. On July 29th, 2023 at around 5 p.m., Lyle Convoy starts his first ever cope stream about me The main point that I got from this stream is where he lost his shit, falsely accusing me of dragging somebody's trauma out for a gotcha on the guy who tried to help him. All I was doing was criticizing Lyle for being a massive hypocrite for facilitating the grooming of Jordan by Vita for 2 years, while treating others for fucking up a similar situation for 8 months like shit. All that Lyle and others did was drag my old fanfic out of the woodwork out of retaliation for calling him out. And then Lyle became an even bigger hypocrite by dragging my past out for a gotcha, all because I made him butthurt, not the other way around. The same thing he falsely accused me of doing. On July 30th, 2023, the first part of my Lyle Convoy response video series came out explaining this hypocrisy. Throughout August, I premiered the second part of my Lyle Convoy response video series, showcasing against Lyle's supposed expertise by proving that there isn't a single conviction against a child predator that Lyle has secured under his belt. Lyle responded to this by mentioning Flutterrocket, aka Legend, which by the way wasn't even arrested, let alone charged or convicted. Flutterrocket lied about doing all of that, by the way, long before he passed away on October 28th, 2022. And that's about it when it came to the Flutterrocket situation. Grimskull came to my attention a while after him initially not getting what I was getting at Lyle for doing by asking where I got this clip of Lyle and Vita talking to each other from. I helped Grimskull start off a research campaign against Lyle and Senate that way. All of this was sometime after Grimskull started looking for dirt against Lyle, because Kaz War Fox is basically fucking useless, so when Grim did this, it felt like Kaz didn't even care, although he was doing it for Kaz. The first of many huge breakthrough discoveries of Lyle's dark past was when the call between Lyle Convoy, Vita, and FNGR were initially talking about absconding Jordan from the abusive home he was living in before he left to live with a relative in Nebraska, in which Jordan moved in with Lyle when he was 18. Then Lyle suggested that Jordan should record him being raped by his mother's ex-boyfriend for quote-unquote evidence. The moment that Lyle suggested that on September 27th, 2018, that was the closest that Thomas himself became a predator himself with Vita. Grimskull then makes his addendum video showing this breakthrough discovery of Lyle's dark past, talking about it, and giving his 2 cents about it. Neora then followed Grim up with a reaction/rant video helping me spread the word around. I then made my part 3 response video to Lyle Convoy, also clipping a very good portion of a video I made that came out before that point called The Truth About the Mint Heart Situation, talking about it all, then shitting on FNGR for coping with Lyle and Senate about all of this. And finally, September 2023 came along with another huge discovery. The moment of truth finally came on my end when they, including Grimskull, discovered the Ichabod call, where Lyle used Jordan as bait to go after Ichabod, and got Ichabod to join the call where the then-to-be 17-year-old minor, Jordan, was there in 2019. Grimskull talked about it on Twitter with many others, which caused Lyle to mass DMCA archive channels surrounding the Senate, Top of the Barrel, and other calls just like the Ichabod call. Grimskull held his last ever live stream on September 10th, 2023. Grimskull became vindicated that this was some sort of gotcha from Lyle and Senate accusing Grim of doing the same thing to Harley. The Grimskull pizza bombing situation happened 2 days later, and how it all happened occurred, providing Grimskull quite the reason to take a huge social media hiatus and removing himself from Twitter, alongside with YouTube temporarily, whilst he's spectating on what's going on Medicare forums. Sometime after this, less than 2 months later, Grim apparently pissed Foxazor off over him making comments about Fox's degeneracy. Foxazor then defected to Lyle's side because he slandered Grimskull, and that Fox's feelings were hurt. Neora defected to Lyle by being just as much of a doxing hypocrite as Lyle is, alongside with Kaz War Fox. And a bunch of autism occurred long after the pedo hunter civil war ended on September 15th, 2023, all because I technically ended the pedo hunter civil war the same way that Gilded Poo caused the snowball effect, which turned out to then cause the outing of Coyote Lovely, or the very reason why the pedo hunter civil war began. Because by September 15th, 2023, there was no longer a common enemy for me and others to fight against. Eventually, throughout September, Gilded Poo made his video on Lyle Convoy's hypocrisy, then shortly sometime after, made his addendum video on that video. Then made a video on Hopeless Peaches, on how she dated a pedophile, and the rest goes on. How the aftermath is going? Not much is going on. I disavowed Foxazor, Neora, Mr. Cult or MV KVLT, Sarbombaclat, and others came after, even though I never said their names in a video. Sir Adamantine, Gallagher, and others. So ever since then, nothing else has been really going on. Before I get to my opinion on all this drama and moving on, I want to just say for the record and state it for the record that I completely disavow my fanfic from 2018 called Sasha's Blood and Fears. It's a creepypasta style fanfic with some very, very awful writing and awful details that are gory and some of it sexual in nature, but in a traumatic tone where it's dramatic and horribly bad. And I'm sorry for that. Now here's my opinion on all this drama. I disavow all of that drama because I care about what I care more about. And that is not being a pedo hunter, not wanting to be somebody's adoptive daddy, nor wanting to do it for the worthless money, cheap clicks, and useless views. I disavow all the hypocrites that turned out to be turncoats and sellouts to Lio Convoy and Senate just because they're not quote-unquote Fox Mafia, and those that do it for the other way around, where they defect to Kaz Warfox because they're not Lio and Senate. I don't know what will become of the next few months, let alone the next few years, but until then, let none of that have anything to do with me and me alone. Let the rest of my December be drama-free for me. Thank you for watching this entire series. I have been your host, Brian Mullins the Fox, signing out. See you in the next video where I address some drama that's actually new, possibly in maybe February or March. Bye. On December 14th, 2023, I posted the first part of what will undoubtedly be the most important point in this drama during the post-pedo hunter Civil War era. It's talking about the pedo hunter to sex worker pipeline. I'll play a juicy clip for you all. Hi everybody, I am Brian Mullins the Fox for a Rant Archive exclusive commentary series where I go deep into what has become a creepily effective pipeline in a bad way, not in a good way. Predator hunting was never noble or heroic, because the predator was none of anybody's business, nor the grooming or the victim or bait or whatever. That's just like saying Superman would have been a real hero had it not been for Lois Lane. Hypothetically speaking, before we get to the logic of this, let's just say that if Lois Lane became a sex worker right as a villain, was out to get her as bait anyway, there would have never been a Clark J. Kent. Because at that point, Clark J. Kent's entire alternate identity as Superman would have been a lie, because Superman isn't real. If Superman were real, he would have been a sexual deviant, or at worst, a predator himself. Welcome to the new Hallmark topic. For me, the first one was and is the roast game, but anything else about that is neither here or there. Let's talk about the pedo hunter to sex worker pipeline.
Hey, I'm Barrington, the current lead admin and account owner of Zoofile Police. If you're watching this video, you're probably considering becoming a pedobuster. Awesome. Pedobusters or predator hunters are a community online that dedicate their time and efforts to removing child abusers and sexual predators from the internet. Many websites like Twitter, Tumblr, 8chan, and Discord have seething and corrupt communities of sexual predators, child groomers, bestiality proliferators, and even necrophiles. They make it our business to get these creeps banned, fired from their jobs, and put behind bars if possible.
I can smell the copium. Hey, it is okay. We don't always get our way, but ease up on that copium.
Now let's get to the practical extrapolation of the logic behind the reasoning of this hypothetical. Number one, why do some minors and young adults want to be bait so bad? For evidence, at least. The reason is because they have someone, preferably a predator hunter, to prop them up to go after them. In the same way that a prostitute that is allowed to have found someone to bang for a lot of money, possibly ripping them off in the process, just the same way predator hunting robs the innocence of minors and young adults, they'd go for the deed no matter what, even if it means being groomed.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll leave that to her discretion. Or her other option is, of course, to set up that camera tonight and see what happens.
Yeah, that's one thing I think that should happen either way, is get that camera rolling just in case.
That's like a prostitute or sex worker shows evidence of their work, because prostitutes call what they do a job, just like predator hunters call what they would rather do a quote-unquote job instead of it being the hobby that it is. The FBI and even CIA don't need to be bothered to show their work, because just like being a prostitute, using minors as decoys is illegal, or in this case, child endangerment is illegal, as prostitution is illegal as well. The FBI and CIA are unreliable resources for predator hunting, even when it's their agents' or private detectives' job. It's not perfect either way. It's not consistent either way. All you have to do is wait for the right time, not make the right time when a crime is committed. Number 2, how come people in general consider the act of quote-unquote pedo busting even remotely noble or heroic? Here's the reason. Because nobody worth their salt in existence gives a fuck about the loss of innocence in society, especially the one that's robbed of the minor by predators, predator hunters, and even other bait or decoys alike. It's far more likely none of their business, and they just merely use their complete and utter obliviousness and ignorance to justify why they don't care, in case of those that ask them to comment about it wouldn't pick up that fact. Which again is the fact that they just don't care. Instead of me saying that I don't blame them for their ignorance and complete obliviousness of the fact that they would have given all the fucks in the world had they cared, if they were involved in it at all. But what becomes of the prostitute or the sex worker, ladies and gentlemen? How come they all get a bad reputation when the public are too retarded to not realize that using anyone as bait to go after predators is no different than their work, or going after anyone like a homeless man or something for sex that costs them not just their innocence, but all their goddamn money. Because sex with any minor or child is what a predator wants, regardless if the predator hunter helped them get there or not. Hereby robbing the innocence of a minor or even child one way or another. And if it's anybody's business enough to call out degeneracy while being a furry like me or a weeb like somebody else, it only stands to fucking reason why they would assume that you are either a predator or pedophile, because no one else cares. Pure manipulation at beyond its finest. Yeah, it outdoes itself as it gradually goes the fuck along. That's why I've said, in this quote here, no one should be that daft or willful enough to unwittingly and implicitly accept the underlying, unspeakable evil that seizing the innocence of minors is morally permissible if it's done in service to some nebulous collectivist predator hunting. I mean, Jesus Christ, people. Really? Did you forget this fucking reason even exists at all? God. Now back to where we were going with this video. That's why predators are controversial topics in general. One topic per individual predator, of course. Why does Lio get to fake it all while using Jordan as bait all along? Someone who's a victim of sexual assault, for example, without having ever sexually abused the bait himself. Unless if it comes out eventually, some way or another, that he absolutely did, or even worse, which has not yet. And I'm not waiting for that opportunity. Because when you learn to become a predator hunter, you prevent yourself from being a kid diddler or rapist when it's convenient, but at the same time, also somehow make it content to the point where you are a predator, but not in a sexual way. Only guilty people hide their past through DMCA, which then initiates the fucking Streisand effect. Innocent ones like me only recognize that it's not as big of a deal as it's cracked out to be when it comes to people blowing my fanfic out of proportion. And finally, number 3, what becomes of the innocence of the minor had it not been for the pedo hunter in quotations? The reason and simple answer is their innocence is gone, regardless if they're bait or not. You don't have to be raped, diddled, adopted, or used as bait to recognize that innocence, just like morality, is neutral, but pain is relative. I then vented off in my unscripted New Year's Eve rant. Hi everybody, I am Brian Mullins the Fox, here for an unscripted New Year's Eve rant. Well, I just got through watching Grimskull's entire video addressing some allegations that he's tired of having to address. So, for all I'm concerned, I have nothing else to say other than fuck Lyle Convoy. And I've known and seen what has been going on with him and Peaches recently. Wanting to acquire a minor's private information. They're docs. Why would anyone, much less you, want to dox the minor and try to get a known on the groomer in this situation? A situation you both had no business sticking your noses in. Dicking around with the minors. Dicking around with people who wanted help. But no, the victim's like, oh, no, I don't want your help. I don't need your help. You're going to put me at risk. You're going to put other people at risk because you have a history and a track record of doing that, Thomas. Grimskull knows that. I know that. Most people know that, or at least they should. It's not going to help anybody. And plus, Zay has done a wonderful video talking about this entire situation between Hopeless Peaches and Lyle Convoy. And I am sick and tired of having to address people when it comes to my fanfic. It was cringe, it was dumb, I should have never written it. So what? I've addressed this multiple times over and over and over again, and I am sick and tired of people having to mention it. I don't want people to mention it anymore. If people already had their opinions on it, move on. It's not that big of a deal anymore. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of the slander that's been thrown my way too. I'm on the same fucking page Grimskull is. And I know I disagree with what I've written back in 2018. I cringed at it when Lyle first covered it on July 29th. And the best part is, when Lyle exposed my fanfic for being cringe, edgy, and dumb, he played into my hands of exposing or dragging people's past out. The thing he falsely accused me of doing. When all I did was exposed the hypocrisy of Lyle Convoy initially. Exposed the truth of these grooming situations when it came to Jordan. Of what Lyle had to put Jordan through to make a point against predators. I never defended a predator. I never had to. You wonder why nobody can name a single fucking predator that I ever had to bother defending? Because I never had to defend one, because I never did. Because any time where I actually, quote-unquote, defended a predator, never happened. And the idea that I would ever want to defend a predator makes me want to fucking throw up. It is disgusting, it is reprehensible, it is just insane. It's one thing for demanding people to move on from other nonsense and fake drama and false accusations, but it's something totally different when you know that 9 times the fuck out of 10, some people just won't move on. Some people just would love to drag on about this shit forever and ever and ever and ever, because it keeps me going. And that's all they want. They want to get a rise out of me. They want to get a rise out of people that they hate for criticizing their lovely Lyo man. For fuck's sake, I've been calling out degeneracy. Remember that video I made on Odin? Yeah, I talked about it. I recapped the Pedo Hunter Civil War in my fashion, and I started making videos about the Pedo Hunter to sex worker pipeline. And what do I get? Nothing but derision from people who don't care about me. Nothing but slander. Nothing but lies. Nothing but people just dragging on my cringy fanfic for fucking responses, reactions, and views. That's all they do it for. And it's disgusting. Especially who they'd have to defend whilst doing so. I'm fucking done. I'm Brian Mullins the Fox, signing out for a Drama Archive exclusive rant. See you in the new year. Then on January 10th, 2024, I premiered the part 2 of the series talking about this pipeline. Here's another juicy clip. Hi everybody, I am Brian Mullins the Fox. Before I get into the wannabe sluts, stats, and other important bits, let's talk about Blake Diamond. Someone who's been exposed for being a human trafficker. Someone who's fucked 2 separate 8-year-olds 2 separate times. The first time being when he was 15 years old, and the second one being when he was 17 years old. And he's done all this for a church in Florida. The moment Lyo and FNGR found out about this was sometime in January of 2022. Blake Diamond, after a while since left the internet, provided some minor irrelevant corrections to the human trafficking accusations accusation levied by Lyle Convoy against Blake Diamond that has later been confirmed. Now back to the video. I want to get to another important bit before we get to the numbers. In fact, as of scripting this, I'll get to the numbers last. You don't get to try to get the own of the century with false accusations of sexual predation, grooming, and expect all of that to fall in your lap as a W against Lyle Convoy. You don't just misconstrue information that is readily available. You don't have to do any of that. Interpret it for what it is. The apotheosis for this is the time I found the video where Lyle and Vita suggested that Jordan record his trauma, or in this case, his quote-unquote abuse or rape, as evidence so that they can substantiate it and turn it into the police for him. The problem I have with Neora's and even Grimskull's initial take, although I thank them for giving it and spreading this clip around, is the intention of having the trauma, or in this case, the rape, being recorded at all. Despite the mentioning of CP, Jordan would have hypothetically took matters into his own hands and got justice against his abuser there himself. Then start the GoFundMe page, and when he turned 18 after he graduates from high school, then found a way to accommodate his life that way, despite the COVID-19 pandemic. This complaint of mine that surrounds my point of complaining is that Lyle and Vita wanted their fair share of the pie, in other words. Wanted in a way where they can take all the credit in the world, even if it actually means Vita being the groomer/sexual predator himself, and not Lyle. The point of me spreading this video call around was just to prove my point that Lyle has endangered a minor, even with a suggestion in the past, and used as bait to go after predators, for example the Ichabod call, and other instances. That was it. Not that he was a groomer or a sexual predator himself, because I wasn't trying to drag somebody's trauma out for a gotcha on the guy who quote-unquote tried to help him. I was pointing out the apotheosis of the pedo hunter to sex worker pipeline. If that's what Kaz War Fox and the Fox Mafia, more like the Docs Mafia, totally original I know, wanted out of this along with Grimskull, Neora, and others, I think that I can take all the credit in the world despite their efforts away from them. Not that they've done anything for Kaz or for that matter themselves to begin with. I helped create the snowball effect where anybody does the research despite Kaz War Fox and the quote-unquote Docs Mafia. You can thank me, and only me, for creating the snowball effect, but let's not obsess over this too much though. Does all of this mean that they were trying too hard to help but not exposing it right when it happened all the time? No, but most times that's the case. Wanting your fair share of the pie is the worst thing you can do to have or even help issues just like these, grooming cases, sexual predation cases, etc., be resolved successfully and in a way where a victim can stop being a victim about it and move on with their life. If it had nothing to do with you when you want to be a predator hunter in general, then stay the fuck out of it and let people, be it an immediate family member, parent, or someone else immediate enough to help them with better resources like the police. And that's why Lyle couldn't just stick to pedantic and cringe toy reviews. Being an overzealous nerd and overall mannerisms as he has proven to be an asshole, it's because he acts fatherless in a way where he feels like a father himself. Much more, or if not just as much as his father was there in his life. Or rather not. Is that why you don't want to? Because if so, then you don't give a flying fuck about the situation. You're practically useless like Lyle, Kaz War Fox, and Hopeless Peaches. When I say, how about it's none of my fucking business, it doesn't mean that I don't care because nobody cares. It's because you're a useless victim, wanting to be a victim that gets to take the blame like it's taking credit all to yourself. I don't need to stick my snoot in any of that shiza, because if I did, that would be my downfall. And the purpose of this video that I'm making is I want to read some studies and do some math to prove that there's always a better way to catch and take a predator away from the public and put them into the fucking slammer, other than using underage girls or minor decoys as wannabe prostitutes to go after predators for evidence and have their trauma or even worse, rape recorded for that purpose. Why wouldn't you, if you were that underage girl, send an anonymous tip to the police Find a way so where the police can take that predator away, put him or her behind bars, so that they can rot for the rest of their lives for sexual predation, or even worse, wanting to abuse you or even kill you after having done the dirty deed. What if a certain quote-unquote predator hunter YouTuber with almost 20k subscribers does something very unfaithful to one of his adoptees, and his wife inevitably finds out? What would his wife say? What would his wife do? When a predator hunter YouTuber, after so many years of using this fucking adoptee as bait, get caught having sex with this adoptee? What would that even mean, I wonder? Because if getting actual help isn't bad enough for you, because it would end your need to wanting to get the predator's D, even if it means being groomed by that very predator, some of them really want to be killed by one. Some of them really do have that fucking fetish of having a predator come after them, rape them, murder them, and have it all recorded for evidence against the predator. And you wonder why there's only 130 plus vigilante groups in America that don't do shit? I'm sorry. We're going to get into some studies, and we're going to get into some math. And the whole purpose of this video is actually very, very serious. To prove the very extent and statistical aftermath and impact of this pipeline, so that more and more awareness will come, and that people will be made more and more aware of all this. Let's get into it now. In order for quote-unquote predator hunting in general to be preventative in nature, it will have to check off all these boxes. Number one, it will have to mean that the person in question that the quote-unquote predator hunter has to deal with as the quote-unquote victim to begin with has not yet been a victim of sexual predation in general. 2. Even if the quote-unquote victim has been a victim of sexual predation, sexual assault, or even rape, it would only check this box off if you can be able to prove that you weren't involved in what happened to begin with, or even if it means not being involved after the initial predation that the victim has been traumatized and been the victim of. Meaning that if you were trying to involve yourself into getting quote-unquote justice for the victim, then it's only proof that predator hunting has never been preventative in nature. Because it would either mean that any one of you quote-unquote predator hunters were involved in any one of these cases to begin with, or the latter of this being what it is, you were never there to have prevented a single instance of sexual predation from ever happening to any one of these quote-unquote victims. And finally, number 3, there is no absolute set in stone way to actually crack down on a predator whilst being a quote-unquote predator hunter, be it a vigilante or a wannabe FBI agent or CIA agent, regardless if the predator committed any crime of predation or not. Before I get to citing the one study that cites other studies, which is meta as fuck, I will make just a few very important clarifications. Number 1, for starters, there is a difference between low-risk and high-risk offenders. 2, studies may suggest one way to deal with predators, others may conflict with those initial studies. So using a study to try to find a definitive way and confirm your biases will not just be counterintuitive, but also counterproductive to begin with. And it's all just because there isn't any set in stone or definitive way to catch a predator. And finally, number 3, predation like this didn't need to have happened for you wannabe quote-unquote predator hunters to be there right on time to secure the greatest bust of all time for yourself. You might be wondering, why else would these quote-unquote pedo hunters want to be involved in this case? Well, I will give you 4 reasons. Number 1, for starters, it would be for content and financial purposes, as opposed to actually dealing with an actual victim of sexual assault properly. Number 2, it would also mean that not only do these quote-unquote pedo hunters want to be involved, they need to be involved. Because what else would be the sole reason that they would want their fair share of the pie to begin with? Number 3. Even if they were not wanting to distribute any potential child porn to begin with, their actions will only prove otherwise in the courts if such events do take place. Because not only is it illegal and not preventative in nature to be doing that for evidence to send to the police, but also predatory in nature. So don't color me surprised about how it got to be that way in the first place. And finally, number 4, not only would they want to potentially distribute CP to the police as quote-unquote evidence to them, they need to. Not only attempting to turn on the police so that some of them jerk off to it in their spare time, but to also prey on the very resources that they neglect to actually care about, which is no different from preying on the victim at all. In fact, it's worse. And yet, you quote-unquote predator hunters do not care about the victim and can't anyway. So why the fuck would you want to overwhelm me with all your sophistry as to how I should care? The idea of anyone wanting to be a quote-unquote predator hunter, no matter the cost, even if it means seizing the innocence of a minor or ceasing it, so that you can have content and people respecting you in return. You'd only care when you can use the victim, be it a young adult, minor, or even prepubescent child, as a tool to push your disgusting agenda of quote-unquote removing child predators where they roam. Because why in the holiest fuck else would you want to indirectly and implicitly commit sexual predation against a victim, let alone against the victim's will, if your predation is the only one that they can put up and deal with out of sheer convenience, while not letting slide the predation of someone else that isn't just you if you wanted the evidence to be handed over to the police? The reason why anyone out of the blue would want that to occur at all is the very same goddamn reason we have predators in certain communities at all. Not because predator hunting is preventative in nature, but because anyone out there willing to hunt one down must be one himself, or herself if it's a woman, without thinking that people who are doing this are creating more and more predators within these said spaces. If we just got rid of these quote-unquote predator hunters and or these quote-unquote predator hunter wannabes, we just have less predators, plain and simple. For there is a whole bunch of ways that are so much better than this, and the study that I've highlighted highlights one of them. How many of these wannabe predator hunters would think about absolutely all the risks and not just the ones they want to deal with and not those they don't? None, because nobody cares. If nobody thinks about the ramifications, then nobody can do the job right. It's just like saying, if I exist, unlike quote-unquote God, why would you ask for guidance or patience? If you're the one behind the fucking steering wheel of the car, don't ask the sky not to crash it. Pay the fuck attention. Now, let's get into some kind of analogy. What if a victim of sexual assault gets murdered just like a prostitute? And when that eventually occurs, wouldn't it just be a little easier to understand the context behind all of that? Yes. In conclusion, the reason why this pipeline exists at all is twofold. Number one, if a prostitute were to exchange sex for evidence, who would want to be a predator hunter? And finally, number two, if a prostitute could get away with everything they've done, especially towards minors, who wouldn't end up getting murdered by a predator hunter? I am Brian Mullins the Fox, signing out. Goodbye. Throughout the rest of December of 2023 and January of 2024, sat and updated the script of the third part to the Pedo Hunter to Sex Worker Pipeline series because nothing of great importance has happened yet. Although I've given some interesting clues as to what would have happened. Throughout this time, I stumbled upon Gregella-chan, made the Part 1 evidence video on January 11th, 2024. 6 days later, Ben Maza, Gilded Poo, and others noticed this. Ben Maza tried to send me a friend request on Discord, but I ignored the request and blocked him, just like I did with Fox's or Katie, Papa Noob, but for a completely unrelated reason, and others. After the call we had on January 19th, 2024, Ben Maza and others continued to start another gay up against her, as she put it, I'll just let my part 2 evidence video sum it up nicely. Hi everybody, I am Brian Mullins the Fox, and if you haven't watched or looked at the previously mentioned evidence video I posted not too long ago, this part 2 video is about and concerning the innocence of Gregella-chan. So as I have learned so far, Gregella-chan, also known as Boyfriend12346 on Degenerate, please do not harass or bully, she's not doing okay. She's been falsely accused of being a pedophile and harassed for quite a while, possibly 10 years. I don't know if I can confirm the 10 years part yet, but if I can't in this video, I probably determined that in the next one. Sorry about that. It was just a bit of miscommunication, that's all. It could have been that they were falsely accusing her of being a pedophile for 10 years, and if that was what she meant, that's a false accusation against her. And I have to sift through and find all the necessary evidence and even proof that I needed to make the case for her innocence. Some portions of some of the screenshots shown in said evidence video were censored, both because I didn't want to get harassed myself and to avoid exacerbating further harassment towards her. But even that is not enough, apparently. Gregella-chan was simply trying to reach out to anyone that has an audience to prove and present the case for her innocence. Gilded Poo and a bunch of degenerate furries and autists couldn't give one flying fuck about her and her willfulness to reach out to others. I wonder why. It's more than likely because they somehow figured out that I accepted and gave her a chance to be heard out with a bit of miscommunication along the way, which happens all the time. But from the time I first got to talk to her in my chat section on DeviantArt on January 3rd, 2024, all the way up to January 11th, 2024, when I made the evidence video, I took the opportunity that was there to reach out for her, and to her, and that I did. I then later have her reach out to Mongrel, which I'll get to later. If someone were just to reach out about their experiences with Lio Convoy, I'm likely the only one that has an audience of sorts. Mongrel doesn't really have an audience, and Gregella cannot do any of this shit alone herself. On January 12th, 2024, during a massive winter storm in my area, me and Gregella had our initial Discord call, and to sum it up, because I didn't bother to record it, because who cares? Number 1, Gregella told me a few things, like her experiences with Lio, mentioning Rosa Ray Ramsey, Vlad, and others. B, Lio Convoy being a member of Jalen's Discord server. C, that she gets angry when her PTSD kicks in over the use of the F slur, not the word fuck, but you know what I mean. And D, she wanted to become a pedo hunter herself and told me that she helped at least a couple of other people in her search for more info on a guy named Ben Maza, which is fine for her, to be honest, even though I know there is a whole lot of risks and a lot of bullshit that happens as a result, and the reason why she got harassed and called a pedo is going to be mentioned later. As long as she can necessarily prevent any risks from happening with her quote-unquote help, I'm fine with it. But if not, which is always the case, then I don't blame her for trying. 7 days later, on January 19th, 2024, I joined in a call with Gregella and Mongrel and talked about plans and the evidence, alongside with her experiences with Lio Convoy, Gilded Poo, and others. Mongrel was going to send me a link or a file to shield her voice, but they were at the point where they were just done with everything and gave up, which is understandable. I don't really fully know as to why they decided to give up. I don't blame either of them for being in a situation where they were set up only for them to fuck up on things that bad and get falsely framed as a groomer or a predator or a pedophile for content, kind of like what Mama Max does for content. So Gregella told me that after she tried to reach out to people like Gilded Poo, just like what happened to her before with Lio and others, decided to start a gay op against her. She told me that Gilded Poo, Vash Lancet, Ben Maza, and others were engaging in a gay op against her, because the reason is anybody's guess at this point. I wonder why else this is happening. I opened up a YouTube community poll on January 20th, 2024, asking the following. What's your guess? I don't know the fullest extent of everything yet until it all comes out. And here's what I said for each choice. For the first choice, the massive conflict of interest is to silence anybody for trying to reach out and share their experiences with Lio Convoy for the sake of using Jordan as a meat shield to keep him alive, and Lio as their only meat shield if Jordan is found to be dead later on, if the worst case scenario is to occur. For the second choice is that Gilded Pooh has or had Ben Maza in his server for entire years and told nobody about it. For the third choice, if the Wish.com Lio in quotations is one of his alts on Discord, they wanted further info on Jordan and just couldn't handle the optics of all this anymore, which is the most unlikely. And finally, for the fourth choice, your guess is as good as mine. I wasn't yet alleging anything conclusively. I just had a few guesses and a bit of speculation from here or there. I could be wrong about any one of them, but yet all the evidence that we need hasn't fully come out yet for that case. So, in addition to that call, I'm now going to sum it all up to you, the common viewer. Before I do, I'm not going to talk about Gregela falsely accusing Lio Convoy of being either a predator or groomer himself, because that's mainly the reason why all of this shit started. It was all out of retaliation, and unlike Gilded Pooh, I'm not putting Lio over Gregela due to some retarded conflict of interest going on right now. By the way, I'm only picking up what she's putting down as to what happened to her. I'm not automatically believing in her or what she says is true. I'm just listening and hearing her out so that I can verify later on and do the research myself. And if what she says is true and not the whole Lio being a predator or groomer part, because obviously that part's false and will be proven to be false no matter what, everything else I can just look into and sum up right now. Gregela first mentions that she was on Twitter one day at the age of 18 in 2020, but she was wrong. It was actually 2022, because she's 19 right now. In 2024, she's likely to turn 20 this year, with someone that seemed like a friend to her. That other people noticed that Gregela told her about all the stuff that she said about Lio Convoy. She was in one of the servers she frequented with, Jeffrey, or Joffrey, however she pronounced it, RTI, and she was with all her other friends back then. While Gregela was shaking and being emotionally unstable, Lio and others were baiting her with trick questions like, why did you say inappropriate things? Or why did you feel like it's okay to be flirting with or wanting to be in a relationship with a 14-year-old? And why were you putting this 14-year-old, why were you doing this and this to a minor? Despite the fact that she has a girlfriend and that she's a lesbian intersex trans woman. She tried to convince them that she didn't do anything that they were alleging against her. To no avail. Lio then talked shit about her ex for having a speech impediment, which is ableist as fuck, then doxed her as a result. Gregela was trying to help one of her friends that didn't involve Gregela herself and her family. Ben Maza stalked her account and Gregela's too. She thought the name Daddy wasn't nice because she since changed her profile name. Lio then started to tell her that she's pissed, angry that he did that to her. She was about to tell Opal about what's been happening with Gregela and Ben Maza, and some false shit about Lio Convoy that she's been talking about for quite a while, but then she left and Opal hates her now. Gregela went to Patchwork Heart about what happened and other things. Lio Convoy, Vash Lancet, Kaz, Coyote, Patchwork Heart, and others, and now even Gilded Pooh, are weaponized against her. On another note, Ben Maza's screenshots were faked to falsely frame Gregela for wanting to establish a relationship with or flirting with minors when she didn't. Ben Maza did the very things that people had to edit screenshots and take other screenshots out of context to frame her for all the actions that Ben did. Ben tricked Gregela into believing that the account she was flirting with was an actual 14 or 16-year-old. It's obviously not true, just due to the fact that they keep changing the story and the age of the supposed victim at a whim alone. Ben Maza was flirting with Gregela when she was 17 years old, a minor, so this had to have been 2 to 3 years ago. If she turned 18 in 2022, this had to have happened in 2021. Gregela was trying to get help from people like Lio Convoy to deal with Ben, a groomer. Lio and others accused Gregela herself of being a predator, a groomer, and they sat on Ben Maza for years while they were pulling a gay op against her themselves. Gregela got into trouble for simply trying to get more info on the predator that was flirting with her when she was 17. Lyle brought her family and friends into this, or at least tried to no avail. They all turned on her, not her mother, not her family members, which had absolutely nothing to do with all this shit. Her mother told them to delete all the videos slandering and besmirching her character. She, as in Gregela, was emotionally unstable, pissed, and taken completely for granted. They framed it as Gregela sexually preying on or flirting with a quote-unquote 16 or 14-year-old to get info on a predator when Gregela was 17 in 2021. Their whole false accusation frame is completely false. I can't even believe that a wannabe predator hunter who claimed that she helped 2 people in the past being accused of being a predator / groomer / pedo because her friends repeated what Lyle and others manipulated others into believing falsely because he told them so in retaliation against the fact that she did the same to Lyle. It's just disgusting that she was framed the same way as Mongrel, and they both believed that Lyle was a predator or somehow a groomer when that's false. That's one thing in common. So let me get this parallel straight to you. Here's another thing in common. Firstly, Ben Maza was flirting with Gregela for content. She then tried to reach out for help on the Ben Maza groomer case that Gregela was framed for. She was also helping 2 others to bring awareness against the same groomer, or Ben Maza in this case. On the other hand, Mongrel was trying to help oust a predator named Esmeralda Rueda and 2 others named Ariana Timble and Rebecca Starlight. Mongrel fell for many traps, trick questions, then got framed for flirting with or taking the bait of predators like Esmeralda, Ariana, and / or Rebecca. Call me Nell fucked up the groomer case, framed Mongrel for being the quote-unquote predator or groomer instead of it being Esmeralda, Ariana Timble, or Rebecca Starlight in any of these cases being the real predator that needed to be investigated, and not Mongrel themselves. Lovely Lena baited Mongrel into talking to an anonymous minor or trying to get more info on Esmeralda, which wasn't appropriate for them to do that, but I don't blame Mongrel for trying to help grooming victims to no avail. That's just not how that's not how grooming cases work. Both of them tried to reach out to Lyle and others to help, and none of them cared about Mongrel and Gregela. In fact, their lives were ruined as a result from them retaliating against them over false accusations of grooming and predation towards Lyle Convoy. Both of them transitioned as a cope to try and recover from all the damage Lyle and anybody else did to their reputations, including damage done to Mongrel by people like Carmen Ryder. Kaz Warfox took it as Gregela, pinning what happened with the Coyote Lovely situation as the big gay op on him. Coyote contributed to further confusion, framing, and Gregela also claimed that the whole gay op between Coyote, Hypnotist Sappho, and Zercarlo was faked only in the sense where it was truly all a LARP instead of just getting info on a zoophile and / or pedophile for evidence to send to the police. Gregela wanted to spread awareness about all this while she defends me because I'm her friend. People like Ben Maza and others are trying to gun it for her because she tried to do the same thing to Lyo and failed epically. Coyote likely did the same thing to Gregela just because she did it to Lyo, and Kaz did the same before. All in all, Gregela's father and brother helped frame her at the same time as something she's not, and her mother has been protecting her and even tried to get her to be careful or leave the internet because of it. And this is what happens when you weaponize false accusations towards a big, popular, and somehow respected predator hunter YouTuber and having karma bite you in the ass, and sometimes when it comes to karma, they didn't even deserve it. I'm not gonna listen and believe. I don't listen and believe. I actually put in the time and effort to do research to verify whether or not if what they're saying is true or false. And if there's a reason why this video is coming out in either late January or early February, it's because research takes a long ass fucking time. And I don't want to hear any fucking excuses from Gilded Poo or anybody else saying that I'm listening or believing in some crazy vaginas for no reason. Or another reason that they speculate, which I'm not going to even get into because it's a waste of time. Do you even care? Because if you don't, why are you going after me for at least attempting to hear them out? I'm not going to always agree with them. I'm not even going to always think that they're even particularly intelligent or literate enough for me to translate completely without just a tiny hint of miscommunication fucking everything else up. So, miss me out on all that gay shit. Overall, in conclusion, Gregayla-chan was never a groomer, never a predator, never did this for any sexual gratification whatsoever. All she did this for is trying to help other people in ousting a predator in their circle, known as Ben Maza. And all I have to say is, really? Why did Gilded Pooh feel so threatened that he told me to, quote, stop talking to vaginas, when all he did was literally concern troll about me hearing people out, and all of them insinuated that I was only listening and believing without ever doing any research to dig into this further, when I did. On the screen, I've debunked those manufactured screenshots, and I've given my explanations as to why those screenshots have been faked. And even if those screenshots were not faked, or at least altered to some distorted degree, which they certainly are, even if they filed a report to the police against her, they've done nothing, because she has not committed an actual crime that the police would fucking go after her for, supposedly quote-unquote committing. And I know that this whole video will not convince any of those fucking retards otherwise, those people who already believed in the false accusations against her, because she accused Lio Convoy and others first, whilst they were covering for fucking Ben Maza, because he was a personal friend of interest in those communities. All of this despite Gregayla's fucking efforts in helping 2 other people oust this predator. And somehow they all have the nerve to moral flag and grandstand to people like me, especially Gilded Pooh. You're the same motherfuckers who took Vash Lancet seriously. I don't want to fucking hear you or hear anyone else make the same goddamn retarded excuses. The reason why fake grooming cases are more popular and prevalent in framing innocent people as predators and groomers is the same goddamn reason why real grooming cases aren't taken seriously. Because they're not done by vigilantes. They're taken care of by people who actually care about the grooming victim. Those that work with law enforcement. Not because they're preventative in nature, but because they're productive in nature, in getting rid of crime, in getting rid of fucking groomers and predators. Hi everybody, I am Brian Mullins the Fox for the 3rd and final installment to the series proving and verifying the innocence of Gregayla-chan. But before I get to all of the spicy and paramount evidence that warranted this video's existence, I'll call some bullshit out when I see it. Now, Gilded Pooh, Gallagher, Grimskull, Sir Adamantine, and others took it upon themselves to meme about, demean, and even disparage me and her for committing the terrible crime of, quote-unquote, listening and verifying, not listen and believe. The irony behind them memeing me with this false narrative that I just took what she said and believed it at face value, and every claim at that, is that if I'm not mistaken, one of Lio's and Ben Maza's alts were in Gilded Pooh's or Oliver's server. I wonder why you went after me for supposedly listening and believing her, while you unironically listened and believed Lio and Ben themselves against her or anyone else against her, such as Gallagher. The moral flagget that made an entire community post bitching about how Gregayla was supposedly spamming penis and balls in their server, and that inevitably becoming the reason why he jailed her, when those screenshots are faked for content. And I know they're faked, because even if they were real, she's just trolling you. But what do I know? Gilded Pooh and Gallagher have a shady past of spamming worse than just text alone. So I'll just dismiss Gallagher's moral posting about it. Miscommunication happens sometimes. Victims can get their own stories wrong, misremember some important details, and even lie about some aspects of it. But it is paramount that you check up with them. That way you can correct them and correct the story for the victim. That's not proof of me listening and believing. That's proof that's only when miscommunication like this, I can double check them and do all the research myself, so we're not falling for each other's mistakes, like you people claim or insist that we are. Take, for example, Gilded Pooh, his cope stream with Gallagher, and his unfunny Skyrim meme, implying that I'm an incel, and other posts he made on me. He's an example of what you consider an asshole taking his own bait. That quote-unquote bait being his own. Disavowing people because they're useless and needless in the overall optics of whatever drama's going on can have varying quote-unquote consequences, apparently. What is it with them putting out unfunny memes about this situation? I had my suspicions, doubts about, and concerning the safety of Jordan Delez after he quote-unquote moved out of Lyo's house in Spring, Texas. That's the other reason why they're after me. I worried that even if Jordan did move out and Lyo noticed all this stuff going on, Lyo was going to somehow find out where he is, and then the worst case scenario would inevitably happen, a potential murder or even murder-suicide in which Jordan is murdered and Lyo takes the cowardly lion's way the fuck out. The worst case scenario wouldn't even need to take place at Lyo's house for it to be detrimental to Kumo's and Gilded Pooh's efforts to clear the story up for Jordan himself. Because if and when it does happen, it might make Kumo cancel the March 1st plan and possibly leave the internet as a result of the unbelievably profound weight and mental illness it has on him when that happens. They harassed and bullied Gregela. They, as in Gallagher, Gilded, Grimskull, Sir Adamantine, and others in their server, away from reaching out to them. That includes possibly an imposter to quote-unquote Ben Maza. It's self-evident that what they mean when they say listen and believe, they mean hearing the victim out and looking for missing pieces to the puzzle. Even when the victim gets stuff wrong or lies about something, every human lies. Don't just dismiss somebody because they're human. Just because someone lied more than once about Lyo one time or another does not mean you should be that asshole who ignored her like you were, Vlad, or just dismiss her and then asks, do you have any proof? If not, shut the fuck up. You ignore the lies and don't give them any mind, to the point where it completely clogs up and blocks off your judgment. I am treated like the enemy for at least giving her a chance to be fully heard out, even when it comes down to correcting her. I'm treated like a lolcow and a spurg for even being suspicious at all. Gilded Pooh, Gallagher, Grimskull, Adamantine, and others continue to spurg post on the internet about this, quote-unquote meme about this, to the point where they make no sense whatsoever, and by God, if the worst case scenario does happen to Jordan Delez sometime down the line in February, you know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna talk about it, spread awareness about it, and make an entire video about it like I've been sitting on for months. When every conceivable and possible legal action has been taken, that's when I spread awareness. That's when I'm going full scorched earth towards Vlad, Gallagher, Adamantine, Lancet, Grimskull, and others that shit on me. Especially Papa Poob, also known as Mothman, for being such a massive fucking moral flaggot this whole time, even all the way back to July of 2023. So that's how I realized that Papa Poob existed at all, even though I ignored and blocked him and his many alts. Yeah. Shit does happen, but I don't want to give them all that much energy and power. I don't even feel like it's worth the anger just to scream in my mic like a fucking banshee, because that's what makes them content. But if they can't make content like this, and when their fucking trolling energy starves, they know they're gonna pull something off like Vashlandset tried to in 2019. Mark my motherfucking words. But fortunately enough, Jordan is found to be okay, so all my worries and fears don't matter anymore. I had worries that I was going to have to make a part 3 to my Pedo Hunter to Sex Worker Pipeline series, but no, I let that series lay to rest from now on. Sorry if I came off as a little quote-unquote schizophrenic to you people. I was just really worried about Jordan's well-being because absconding yourself from any home, let alone one of complete mistrust, or one involving adults adopting other adults, is dangerous. It can rarely be proven fatal, however. It is nowhere near as easy as most of you think. There are cases where when the whole adults adopting adults thing goes to shit, it ends up someone being murdered, and those chances in general are extremely rare. Now, as for the quote-unquote Ben Maza grooming Gregela when she was 17 years old, I don't have screenshots to verify, but that doesn't entirely mean that it absolutely never happened. You never know with screenshots nowadays. Screenshots can be faked, doctored, or outright not exist when it matters the most. It could very well be true, it's just that I cannot absolutely verify that it is. It could also come out that it is just another lie told to me by Gregela, but you never know with even Gregela herself. All of this drama started because I gave Gregela a chance, and just like with Rose, the same shit happens again. Ben Maza reinforces misinformation and faked screenshots, falsely framing her again. Nothing else of value happened in this entire situation/fiasco. And as a matter of fact, after making and posting this video, I am moving on from the saga, meaning that part 3 is the finale, and a disappointing one at that. But at least I tried. The part 2 should do just nicely for the most part, but that doesn't matter, given that people are just gonna lie about her some more. No criminal records, no convictions, or real charges filed against her. Predator hunting content is so fake nowadays, yet it's touted as real content, providing real awareness about real predators. Yeah, right. Fuck off with that garbage. And no, I don't mean the one where a completely different Gregory Hall that's born in 1949 or some different year than 2004? She's not 70 to 80 plus years old. I'm absolutely certain that since there aren't any charges, meaning that I successfully cleared her name legally, but not without controversy, of course, Ben Maza has only reinforced more BS because arguing with him is like talking to a brick wall. He'll never listen. I'm starting to think that there's now this pattern of her lying simply because others lied to her about who and what she is at this point, and that pattern alone is what I'm catching on to, if I'm not mistaken and if I'm perfectly honest, meaning that she literally lied to me, and that the whole grooming allegation against Ben Maza is either likely true or likely false, but it's as a result of them accusing her of the same shit. Because at this point, I'm not going to take one more step into the shitpile saga. At this point, I'm tired of trying to reach out to those who reach out to others about Lio or whoever else in Senate, because nobody cares or is willing to at least hear them out to verify which claim is true and which claim is false. Thank fuck I don't listen and believe, because had I known that Lio was never a pedo himself, I would have actually been a lolcow myself, when I'm thankfully not now, and never will be. And I have a video coming up where I'm responding to Gilded Poo as an example on when forcing a lolcow goes horribly wrong. Hi everyone, I am Brian Mullins the Fox, and it's been quite an eventful few days, if not a week or so. Looks like Gilded Poo asked for it. It's not like I quote-unquote took the bait to them, it's that when you force a lolcow, this is the end result. I just got done working on the Gregela Chan Part 3 video, and it will just be my thoughts and opinions on current situations surrounding the saga. And now, before I get to responding point by point, if Gilded Poo actually accepted my request to have him make a response video to me, the cope stream him and Gallagher held was actually quite hilarious. What's even funnier than that is the fact that Gilded Poo, someone who has a history of trolling people with either zoo or scat porn or whatever, is now going on 2.0 apparently. So the thing that he says that I will be responding to for anyone with potential substance will be in this video. Without further ado, let's begin. Let's get cracking, shall we? Oh wait, you expected a response to me from him, didn't you? He chickened out. He realized that it takes effort to actually and objectively refute arguments, meaning that even if he makes his quote-unquote video on me at all, I highly doubt it. It's not what I expect. So I'm not going to waste my own time on that nonsense, but I'll talk about what's been going on as of late. Number one, most importantly, Gallagher and I had a back and forth or two that went absolutely nowhere because Gallagher only wanted to confirm what he wanted to believe is true or confirmation bias in the first post-roast game debacle ever, and for the other one, he falsely accused me of hiding evidence, and Gregela for hiding evidence that she doesn't have against Lio directly. Number 2, Gilded Poo has been kind of cringe posting as of late in general. And 3, nothing else has been happening as of late. I am now closing the door on Gilded Poo, Gallagher, and other idiots who fail to recognize that when people like you don't have a worthwhile response to consider or a new argument that doesn't sound like one I've debunked or even addressed from 2019, the conversation is pretty much over and dead. So don't be running your mouth about this topic if you're gonna do shit like that. And that does mean I'm telling you people to keep your mouths fucking shut at this point if you know nothing about the topic or are just gonna spout bullshit off about me. Although I will suggest to you, people who are unbiased and neutral to watch a bunch of videos. And it goes as follows, and will be linked in the description box down below. The roast game numbers by the year 1998 to 2016. Hypothetical Christmas dinner numbers by the year 1998 to 2016. Christmas dinner the entire multi-series 1900 to 2023. The roast game Families by the Number Theory. The roast game Christmas dinner price paradox. The roast game A Final Look from 2021. And finally, my research compilation. So, here's the rant. The past week or so has been really fucking annoying me, with Gallagher, Gilded Pooh, and others cringe posting, saying nothing worthwhile to even consider, and pestering me to debate me, bro. If I already said no, then take no for an answer. If you thought it was going to be a waste of time, then why the fuck were you pestering me? Why the fuck was anyone pestering me to come on in your dogshit server, Gilded? All you want is content. All you want is a lolcow to define all lolcows. Yet, you force it every fucking time. And even those that are lolcows seem forced, just like content coming from those lolcows are as forced in humor as current-day contagious laughter compilations. And there's a good reason why I stopped watching those contagious laughter compilations for a while. Hopefully they'll find something new and find something interesting to present to the world. I'm not a fan of lolcow channels, in fact I kinda hate them. But all that aside, fuck Gilded Pooh, fuck Gallagher, fuck Pootopia, fuck any irrational conspiratorial coward that would want to pester me to debate him or Gallagher or anybody else. And fuck anybody that's willing to run their mouth only to shoot their faces off, proverbially of course, and say nothing of value, leaving me no choice but to ignore you. But for those who aren't these people that I've mentioned and listed, I'm Brian Mullins the Fox, signing out. Sorry about this, it's just the first time in like 5 years that anybody has ever tried to respond or counter my points, only to fail and say the same shit 5 years later. Bye. Now, let's get into a not-so-important part of my history so far. I joined Night Cafe Studio on November 2nd, 2022, and ever since then, I'm going to continue to use that website to make more AI art, because there has to be a human mind to drive it, and a human being to self-innovate it. I've made videos about the topic of AI art, and why I hate Luddites who hate AI art. I still use this website to generate art by using an AI to this day. This is the shortest chapter in this entire documentary. Now let's move on to the final thing I'll talk about before I end this documentary with a rant, closing credits, and signing out. A video that pretty much sums up me moving out of Ohio and moving into Missouri. Hi everybody, I am Brian Mullins the Fox. I want to make a somewhat long vlog commentary about my very long and hard experience moving out of Ohio and moving into Missouri. It's been a long and arduous journey that took us months to get most of it accomplished. Throughout the months of May, June, and July, we'd usually drive all the way to Missouri and back to Ohio every other weekend. This took me months to fully remember all of these events as they happened. So, the timeline began on May 13th, 2022, the day after my dad made his first plan to go to Missouri public to me. I was excited to actually go to the next home we're living in. It took us from around 1 p.m. all the way up to before 9 p.m. to the Quality Inn Hotel on the outskirts of Hannibal. May 14th, 2022, we woke up eventually, we got all our stuff out, left that hotel room empty, and checked out. We would have gotten our breakfast at the hotel, but we chose McDonald's instead, not to mention that they didn't have breakfast open yet, so we didn't want to waste our time, so we drove all the way up to our new home, which stood out like a sore thumb in the small town of Paris. The first bit of work we did when it came to going to the house at all is for me to mow the backyard and my dad to mow the front yard. This became common almost every time we arrived here. It's going to be interesting as time goes by. This is the first day among many that I actively went to the library to watch YouTube videos, do some research, download videos, and all other things throughout the months of 2022. It was a nice stay at the Columbus Metropolitan Library in Dublin, Ohio. It kind of made me feel brand new in general. May 28th, 2022, we stayed at the second hotel in Missouri, the Super 8 in Hannibal. Of course, this was only for one night. This was after another day, but this time, my dad is the only one doing the lawn mowing. May 29th. We left the Super 8 hotel, did some more lawn mowing, then drove all the way back to Columbus, Ohio. Throughout the rest of the month of May 2022, we've been clearing out that apartment until the point where there was almost nothing left to take out or take with us in the living room, including separating and organizing clothes, leaving behind all the records I couldn't take with me or wanted. And the last day of the month of May 2022, May 31st, 2022. This was my last full day living and sleeping at that one-bedroom apartment I lived in for well over 4 years at that point. I slept on the slightly dilapidated blue recliner my dad kept for years before. And now we enter into June 2022. On June 1st, 2022, this is the first day I left that apartment behind for good. We stayed at that Hawthorne Inn in Columbus once for 2 days and 2 nights. It was a pleasant stay. June 4th, 2022. We left the Hawthorne Inn, taking our stuff with us as usual. I went to the library in Dublin, got picked up, and we booked a long-time reservation at the Norwood Inn in Worthington. Right after a little bit of a delay, we got in our first room at this hotel on the 2nd floor. After we did so, we went to a nearby Chinese buffet. I liked it, but my dad was kind of disappointed in that restaurant. I recorded my first rant video in a hotel room saying goodbye and shitting on the dead website known as debate.org as June 6th, 2022. Now let's go to June 9th, 2022. We left the Norwood Inn for the first time after a comfortable few days being there, even during a temporary power outage that lasted only a few hours. June 10th, 2022. I didn't have to do any lawn mowing, so I watched my dad do lawn mowing and helped him sweep up the grass off the asphalt of the street. We stayed at the Motel 6 in Hannibal for one night after driving several hours to get there and have something for us to eat on the way, a Wendy's. We left the very next morning, took another several hours to drive back to Ohio. June 11th through June 16th, 2022. After several hours of driving back to Ohio, we booked another reservation at the Norwood Inn in Worthington. Right after we did, we put all our stuff in the room. This time it's on the 1st floor. Throughout this stay at the hotel, I started and finished a new series called The Roast Game, Numbers by the Year, the first of its kind. On the 14th of June, after a long heat wave that affected the power at the hotel, left us without power from around 4 p.m. all the way up to 4 a.m. 12 fucking hours without power. It was painful. Just utterly painful. On the last full day of our second and last stay at the shitty Norwood Inn Hotel in Worthington, it was mostly peaceful. I had a tooth extraction that got rid of 2 disgustingly weak teeth up my very front this time, unlike only one in 2020. On June 15th, 2022, throughout the evening and night, I couldn't eat anything that I wanted until I let my gums fully heal. We left on the 16th of June, I went to the library again, and I've stayed at other hotels throughout most of June of 2022. Number 1, the Executive Inn in Chillicothe, for 2 days and 2 nights, June 17th through the 19th. 2. The Microtel Inn in Sunbury, twice for 3 days and 3 nights, June 19th through 22nd. 3. The Baymont Inn in Columbus/Rickenbacker, once for 1 night, June 22nd. 4. The Knights Inn on Poe Avenue in Dayton, for 2 days and 2 nights from between June 23rd to 25th. This is, of course, during the time of the This Is What You Came For rant, while it was recorded on my Lenovo P11 that doesn't exist with us anymore. And finally, 5. The Econo Lodge in Akron, 2 days and 2 nights, June 25th through June 26th. During the time we went to the Executive Inn in Chillicothe, we went to a Walmart in Chillicothe, got some more groceries, including macaroni salad. This is the first ever time I had to eat macaroni salad, because at that time, I couldn't eat anything else that's harsh, as my gums recovered from that painful double tooth extraction at an Aspen's dental clinic. I started eating normally again after that. Now let's get on to June 27th through the 30th of 2022. Then all of a sudden, due to my dad's massive financial fuck-up, regrets booking a room in a hotel with no power and no internet. We had to stay at our very first campsite this year. The hotel he tried to book a reservation at and failed was the Red Roof Inn in Dayton, Ohio. The first campsite we stayed at was Alum Creek State Park in Delaware, Ohio. And now we enter the month of July of 2022, starting with July 1st, 2022. After staying at the library for a few hours, we left Dublin and spent several hours driving all the way up to Missouri again. We drove all the way to our house and not at a hotel right away. July 2nd, 2022, after a few hours of painstaking hard work, I was drenched in sweat whilst wearing a red shirt that wasn't the kind of shirt that absorbs the sweat well. After we got the most of what we could upstairs and took it down to what is now my dad's workout room, we stayed at the Ramada Inn in Columbia, Missouri, and got a bite to eat. July 3rd, 2022, we left the Ramada Inn Hotel in Columbia, went to a Walmart in Columbia. We drove all the way up to the Days Inn Hotel in Columbus, Ohio. This hotel, out of many, had the strictest Wi-Fi I've ever experienced it being in a hotel room at all. When you go on YouTube, the restriction mode was clearly on, no matter what. I finally got to take a shower. I had a lot of acne development around my back, my arms, and some other parts of my body. It was a huge breakout. After I got done taking a shower, I felt mostly brand new, but the pain from popping all those zits was still slightly lingering on. I've only stayed at the hotel for one night on July 3rd. From July 4th to the 9th of 2022, we left the Days Inn Hotel in the morning, drove to the library, and stood there for several hours, then went back to Alum Creek State Park. This time, the reservation lasted until the 9th. All the while, I was actively working on the Roast Game Topical Autopsy, and then later, the Roast Game Topical Audit. And then, on July 9th, 2022, my first appearance at the Delaware County District Library in Delaware, Ohio was made. We've been going from campsite to campsite throughout the month of July. We went to Delaware State Park for the first time from July 8th to the 13th. We went to Wolf Run State Park in Caldwell, Ohio for the first time. Before and after, we seen Thor, Love, and Thunder, July 14th and 15th, 2022. Then we went to the Washington County Library in Marietta, Ohio, which my first appearance there was on July 15th, 2022. Then we went to the Mount Gilead State Park for the first time between July 17th and 21st, 2022. Then we went to Alum Creek State Park for the third time on July 21st, 2022. On July 22nd, 2022, we left Ohio again to continue to work on the house in Missouri. This time, we drove straight to the house within several or so hours. This in spite many restroom and gas station fill-up breaks. Now, we're in July 23rd, 2022. We woke up to continue to work on the house some more for several more hours, then we left. Went to a nearby Pranger's for groceries, including a 10-pack of Fireball whiskey. A few hours later, I recorded a video about what happened a year later after my August 2nd, 2021 interview, whilst we stayed at the Budget Inn in Columbia, Missouri. On July 24th, 2022, we left Missouri and went back to Ohio after a several hour-long drive. Then we went to Delaware State Park for the second time between July 24th through the 26th. We then went to the Kaiser Lake Campsite Park in St. Paris, Ohio between July 28th and the 31st of July 2022. All the while, around the second time we went to the Alum Creek State Park was around the last time I've ever wanted to sleep in a tent. Hence, we started sleeping in the car instead of in the tent. Now let's head into August. There was only one day that we went to Missouri and straight back to Ohio, then do some more work. And that day was August 13th, 2022. We left Missouri and came back to Ohio, this time for the rest of the month, until early September, for what will be the last visit to the house in Missouri in 2022. Then we stayed at the Days Inn in Hannibal for one night on August 13th. Then we stayed at the Super 8 in Columbia once for one night on August 14th, after we did some more work in the house. Moving, getting rid of other shit, throwing more trash, more unneeded stuff away, fixing up the kitchen, fixing up the dining room, fixing up the living room, and what we called the waiting room. Here are some more libraries we went to for the first time when we came back to Ohio. We went to the Mercer County District Library in Salina, Ohio. The first appearance was August 4th, 2022. This was during the time I was working on that compilation on every time I said the roast game between 2017 to 2022. Then, the day later, we stayed at the Piqua Public Library in Piqua, Ohio on August 6th, 2022. Then we went to the Carnegie Public Library in Washington Courthouse, Ohio on August 20th, 2022. Then we briefly went to the Lebanon Public Library in Lebanon, Ohio for a short time only, because it sucked, on August 20th, 2022. Then we went to the John McIntyre Library, that's a part of the Muskingum County Library System in Zanesville, Ohio, on August 27th, 2022. The same day as the first appearance, we went to a great Chinese buffet restaurant. Both of us liked it there. It was a decent, delicate buffet there. Alongside with a few restaurants we went to throughout these summer months that were pleasant and that go as far back as June 1st. Now let's get to September. On September 1st, 2022, prior to our last big trip to Missouri of the year, we stayed at a Ramada Inn on Schrock Hill Court in Columbus, Ohio. Me and my dad had a blast and I started working on Thanksgiving dinner numbers by the year. We drove out of Ohio and into Missouri. This time, just like another time, not at a hotel, I slept in my dad's SUV in the front passenger seat while my dad decided to sleep in that house with no power, no running water, and in a tent he assembled himself. But before we left for Missouri at the hotel on Schrock Hill Court in Columbus, Ohio, we had a nice dinner after my dad ordered DoorDash. There was one and only one day that we went to the house to do a few things. Alongside with a little work, this was the shortest day to be at the house, only to come straight back to Ohio, but this time, this would be the last for the rest of 2022 and a good portion of 2023. Before we left, one of our neighbors gave us a bag of coal to supposedly keep the old house stench out throughout the winter. We ended up never using it throughout the entire winter because we didn't have scissors. That didn't matter anyway. This is the first time staying at 2 hotels in Illinois and the first hotel I've stayed at in Indiana. We went to the house in Missouri for the last time in 2022 on September 3rd. And of course, the 2 hotels we went to in Illinois was first the Red Roof Inn in Champaign for one night on September 2nd, and Roadway Inn in Pittsfield, Illinois, once for one night, September 3rd. And then we drove all the way up to Terre Haute, Indiana to stay at an Econo Lodge, a very shitty one with very weak-ass internet for one night on September 4th. Then, after our long stay at the Econo Lodge in Terre Haute, Indiana, we came back to Ohio to stay at Alum Creek State Park for yet another reservation. We stayed at multiple campsites, and on December 23rd, 2022, a massive winter storm ruined our chances to stay at more campsites for the remaining days of 2022. So, we stayed at the Buckeye Inn Hotel for a couple of nights and a couple of days. Then we went back to the Deer Creek State Park campsite in Mount Sterling, Ohio to get our stuff. And then we booked another reservation for a hotel room, this time at a Red Roof Inn in Grove City, Ohio. This, of course, long after we went to the first hotel since late October, which was the Travelodge Inn in Grove City, where I couldn't sleep for a little while because there was a little child screaming and crying and throwing a temper tantrum all night, kind of fucking up my sleep. So, back to Grove City's Red Roof Inn for one night. Then we left, went to the Dublin Library, where we proceeded to go back to that same hotel again after the last night we've ever slept at the campsite in Nashport, Ohio. Then we stayed at the same Red Roof Inn, but at a different hotel room in a different story, this time the first story. And this was for the remainder of December, all the way up through January 2nd. We left on the morning of the 3rd of January 2023. And then throughout the months of January and February, we went back to campsite, then hotel room to hotel room, and so on, until my dad came up with a plan to permanently move into Missouri and no longer feel like there's a need to stay in Ohio because there's no reason to. On February 11th, 2023, we left Ohio for the first and final time since September of last year. But unlike all of last year, this time it's permanent. But with all that being said, that's how my move out came along. I've lost 62.4 pounds from April to May of 2022 to yesterday morning when I first weighed myself since last year. So, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you like, share, and subscribe. I'm Brian Mullins the Fox, signing out. Goodbye.
Now you've just witnessed, for the first time since the first Dropping Flies documentary came out on Thanksgiving in 2023, the sequel to that documentary. And within it is the roast game lore from 2022 to 2025, all the drama and the bullshit I went through, just like I went through from 2018 to 19, my history with AI art, my history with moving out of Ohio and moving into Missouri, and finally, the rant so far. I've been putting so much effort into all of this content for so many years. One of these days, either in late 2027 or early 2028, it'll border on a decade. 10 years. And even then, I'll go beyond the 10-year point and still make content under the name Brian Mullins the Fox for future generations of content creators and content watchers on this platform and the internet in general. I will not stoop any lower. I will not comply to those who won't comply to their own argumentative, logical, mathematical, and even content standards. I have no obligation to debate anyone anymore since I fucking retired. I have no obligation to respond to people given that they are a waste of time. I don't like lolcow content. I don't like predator hunters. In fact, I kind of hate them, as much as I don't trust the police. I have trust issues with people on the internet for a reason. Because I'm not a lolcow. I script my videos, I make mistakes, I correct those said minor mistakes. I make people mad by telling the truth. And even when I'm not making people mad, I tell the truth anyway, and even correct some mistakes. As a result, I'm sick and tired of having to kowtow to any slack job idiot with lack of comprehension on anything. Because I'm not going to anymore. It is a fucking cancer. It is a disgrace that this is how far debating has died. That people are so bored. People are not there to watch people duke it out with information. They're not like flat earth debates or anti-vax, pro-vax debates. Those debate days are gone. Fake internet blood sports, fake drama, fake this, fake that leads the way in making content nowadays, even when it comes to YouTube commentary/art commentary. I wonder why it's still somewhat breathing even though it's damn near dead. But with all that being said, thank you all for watching this entire documentary. Thank you all for watching this channel still for roughly 7 years. Given that I only have 3 more years to go to make it a decade, I will make it a decade. And at this point, by early 2028, Dropping Flies 3 will come out. And what will come as a result will be part of that documentary. I am Brian Mullins the Fox, signing out. Goodbye to you all. See you all in Season 4 of the Post-Roast Game Theory. Bye.